Welcome to the first episode of the channel. Today we're going to discuss mostly what was said last year on my talk which I gave at the conference about the dynamics which will be enabled on this new social media. So I decided to go over the same arguments from that talk because they're just foundational to understand the whole thing and everything else which will be built on top of this. But the difference this time is going to be that it's going to be said a lot more freely and without such a rush, because there I had only 40 minutes and I had put too much things on the slides. And so this episode is going to be something like a foundation for every other episode in the future. And today we're not going to cover any technicalities like how the blockchain works and internet stuff, but we're going to talk more about the social media stuff on top of it. And so I'm gonna go through a list of bullet points which I've laid out, just like a structure for what I want to say. And the first thing is that so the user experience is gonna be the same as Web 2, even though it's on a blockchain, the whole thing. And users are not gonna think about the blockchain at all, like almost never. And there are practically no scalability limitations, and you're gonna fully own your identity, just like you can fully own your cryptocurrencies with a private key. And so you'll be completely sovereign with your identity. And so no platform is going to be able to remove you or delete you, and so that you lose your entire livelihood or your channel or your Twitter account, for example. And so in this ecosystem which we'll be proposing here, there will be only one social graph, but that social graph will be reused for any new social application that somebody figures out that is necessary, or they just have an idea for it. And it's going to be an open ecosystem where anybody can build on top of it, and anyone will be able to extend it without having to pay rent to someone else. There will be no API walls guarding the data, and there will be no predatory lock-in. And so here's one example, like, which is maybe not the best example, but still when we're going to be disintermediating the current platforms, what do we mean? For example, Facebook, if you have friends and you want to talk to them, you want to chat to them, you can do it either through Facebook or through Messenger, which is actually really nice that we have a separate app to chat with our connections. But that's not true for Instagram. For example, if I follow someone and we're chatting, I always have to use the Instagram app, and I'm always greeted with a feed which is trying to engage me and suck my time into it so that it can show me ads. That's their revenue model. And they've deliberately chosen not to separate the messaging part of Instagram into a separate app because they want the revenue and the eyeballs. But in this ecosystem which we'll be building here, that's not going to be the case. Like, you'll be able to separate messaging from everything else. And this is just like one tiny example of how much more freedom we'll have in terms of what we want to build and how we want to engage with media. Okay, so the first thing is that in this new ecosystem, anybody will be able to extend it with new kinds of signals and events. And so we're not going to be limited just to likes, posts and comments and posting a video or something like that. There will be a lot more extensibility in terms of what kinds of reactions there are or what kinds of signals we want to send. And these signals, they will be with structured data, with specific types. So it's not going to be based on text, which is ambiguous and hard to aggregate, because there are many ways to say the same thing, and sometimes it's not clear cut if two things mean the same thing. But if we start using structured data, like for example a like and a laughing emoji, these are really simple examples. They're different, they're the same type, they're a reaction, but they're encoding a different reaction, and those reactions then can be aggregated, they can be counted, how many likes there are or how many of the other thing there are. Another thing is that we'll be able to subscribe to other identities in a more granular way, in a more specific and intentional kind of way. We're not going to be just following someone or hitting the bell icon for notifications if there's anything new from them, but we'll be able to be more specific with what we actually want to get notified for. Like, for example, I want only pictures, I want only text posts, I want only text posts which are related to finance, or which are predictions, or maybe I want only text posts from a specific app that user is using. Because remember, their identity is one. Of course, they can have multiple accounts, but they can have one main account which we can just follow, and we can follow their activity from specific applications, from specific content type, or we can even define custom filters and thresholds, like only if their post gets more than 200 likes or something like that, or only if it's some combination of from a specific application or some type, or even specific date or time within the day. Like, there are literally no limits in terms of what we'll be able to specify for how we want to filter the events from someone else which we want to consume and be notified for. And also, we're not going to be stuck with a single feed. Like, we'll be able to define many different algorithmic feeds, which we'll be able to plug different sources, and which identities and the events from those entities we'll be able to say. We'll have different feeds, and one feed might be for financial stuff or for predictions, or one will be political, one will be for my hobby stuff. Also, there will be something like a marketplace for algorithms. You will not have to always purchase it. You'll be able to simply use it. Okay, another thing. What is liquid democracy? So, direct democracy is when everybody is voting on every issue. And that means that everybody has to, be up to date with every issue. And that simply doesn't scale. It didn't scale in the past, and it absolutely doesn't scale nowadays. Like, the world is more complex than ever. On the other end, we have representative democracy, where we actually we elect representatives to represent us on a bunch of issues. But liquid democracy is something which combines different aspects of these two ends of the democracy spectrum. And in liquid democracy, we'll be able to vote directly on some issues if we have a strong view or we feel that we have the expertise. But for many issues, we can delegate our vote. But we don't have to delegate our votes only to a specific representative. We can actually split our vote for the different aspects of the world. Like, for example, defense or education. For education, I might want to delegate to my aunt, because she is a teacher and she's been in the trenches and she knows what's important there. But I might delegate to my uncle or to some public figure matters in terms of some other kinds of policy. So that's usually what people mean when they talk about liquid democracy. And of course, it will be enabled in this ecosystem, in this new type of platform, this new version of the internet. But we can actually push it a lot further. Like, it doesn't have to be only for what we vote for in terms of an expression. We can also inherit things. Like, if somebody is using some specific algorithm to filter their information, they will be able to make their choice, this setting of theirs, which algorithm they're using, they'll be able to make it public. And I'll be able to actually follow that. I'll be able to follow which algorithm they're using, and I'll be able to either get a notification if they make some change, or even I can simply inherit that as a setting for myself. And so in this new internet, so the basics are their identities, and they generate events. And these events they can be anything, like I already said, any kind of new signal or whatever. And they can be private or public. And so anytime you change a setting, that is an event. Anytime you post, you upload a video, or you comment on something, all those are events. And we'll be able to control the visibility of those events, like if they're public or private or shared only with some certain group. And that means that we can actually, push the visibility not just on the content we create, but even on our settings. And if I make my choice of an algorithm public, somebody will be able to see that and follow that. And we'll be able to even query the whole internet, how many people use different algorithms for filtration of their content. And we'll be able to look at trends, like which algorithms are becoming viral. So not we'll have virality not just for content, but even for settings for how people want to engage with content. So another aspect of the whole thing is that we'll be able to deduplicate any concept, event, or entity in this new way of doing the internet. And so think about Wikipedia or questions in Stack Exchange or Quora. Usually there's only one entry for anything. Like some things of course don't exist, but there aren't two entries for a specific war which is ongoing. No, there's only one. And currently that's being done by humans. They deduplicate things if somebody makes another one. And so that's one way to deduplicate things and have only one representation for a concept, event, or an entity. But we'll be able to also leverage a lot more automation and algorithms, because in this ecosystem, everything will be a lot more structured in terms of the data and the signals and the events. And so we're not going to go into details how that deduplication is going to be happening, but in the future we'll talk more about it. And it's not completely solved as a problem, but it's like a North Star which we'll be aiming at. We want to have a single representation for any concept, event, or entity. But that doesn't mean that there will be only one opinion. So, for example, for some policy, that policy is going to have a single representation, but there will be many opinions attached to it. And we'll be able to locate that policy, or some argument which is being had somewhere, like if something should be done or not done, and we'll be able to browse all of the opinions which are attached to it. And that's also how our mind works. Like, for example, for any concept or event, I have, at least symbolically, a single representation in my mind, and I have my own opinion attached to that. I also know that the opinion of my friends attached to that, which might be different, but still they're all pointing to the same event. I have a single representation of that event in my mind. I mean, I don't know how it's represented in terms of neurons. Maybe there are different regions in the brain, I don't know. But symbolically, there's only one in my mind. And it's easy for me to recall the event and then to start iterating over all of the opinions which are attached to it and pointing towards it. And in this ecosystem, that's going to be the North Star which we'll be aiming at, deduplicating any such thing. And also, even my opinion for a specific issue should be also deduplicated. So I shouldn't be able to give the same opinion multiple times for an issue and have those multiple opinions be counted, because the system should be able to disambiguate, and if they're really similar, they should be counted as one. And the system should either not let me say the same thing again, or if it should prompt me to help me figure out if my opinion is sufficiently different to warrant a new event. And so this is really important because we want to deduplicate every argument which is being debated. Let's talk about argument maps or debate maps. I first saw this concept from the Society Library led by Jamie Joyce. And there the idea is that we have an argument which we want to reach to some conclusion, and we don't want to miss any context. We want all of the pros and cons and different arguments which are supportive of the thesis or against it in a single place. And we want to not have any duplicates. We want to have everything in front of us. Yeah, we don't want to miss any context. And actually, they're not the ones who came up with argument or debate maps. This concept is really old, and there are many kinds of software which do that with different ways of doing it. Like, for example, the debate maps there, which I mentioned, they don't allow voting, but here, because everything will be plugged into a social media, we'll be able to vote on different outcomes or different arguments for or against something. And also, an argument can be structured or supported by other arguments, which themselves are going to have their own debate maps or argument maps. And so it's going to be a recursive structure of argumentation, and we'll be able to look at any one argument and see, how it's structured and what's supportive of it or what it's not. We'll also be able to see which people submitted different arguments or how they're voting in terms of prioritizing different arguments. One really important thing about this whole thing is that identities are going to be generating events, but the events which are generated are different from the actual current state of the system. And for example, in blockchain, the transactions are the events which change the state, but in order to construct the state, you have to apply all of the transactions from the beginning to see who owns what. And in blockchains, typically there's only one state, one current state, which is being modified by the new set of transactions which enter the system. But here, in this system we're going to be building, we are going to embrace multi-perspectivalness and forking, and we'll be able to construct different views of the same set of events. Like, for example, I might think that some account is a bot or not a real human, and I might simply discard their votes and not count them when I'm constructing the current state, which I think is the correct state. And so for the same set of events which have been generated, and there will be more and more in time being generated, we'll be able to debate how to actually construct the current view which we're gonna use and browse the system and inspect it and whatever. Yeah, so there will be different competing views of how to actually ingest and interpret the events. And we're not going to be limited to simply either counting or not counting the votes of some account, but we'll be able to even interpret them and give them different weights. We'll be able to vote on how we want to weight the different events and signals. And if there is some dispute, for example, we're a community, we have a specific state and a common view, but for some aspect of it, we don't agree. There's some faction, and we can actually split either the whole state, or that aspect of the state can split into multiple views. And we can see in time how the different communities which have split into the forks, how they do. And in time, that split can be resolved if one community is determined to be more correct in time, if more evidence comes up, or if they simply show better results in terms of their predictive power and how they earn reputation in this system. So yeah, that's one really core thing about this whole new internet, is that we'll be able to branch off and split our interpretation of what happened. Another thing I want to mention is something called fact databases. Like when we determine something is a fact, those facts will be fed into argument maps, because when we're arguing about something, usually it's not going to be just weighted in terms of opinions of identities, but we also want to factor in what is factual and what is not. But of course, determining truth is a tricky aspect. And so for certain facts, they're widely known. Like, for example, I would like to choose a fact database which says that the Earth is not flat. Of course, I haven't actually checked all of the logic behind that, but I trust that what I've been taught is correct, and I simply delegate my opinion to an entity which says so, and I want to use fact databases where the Earth is not flat. And if somebody actually has said that the Earth is flat and he's publicly stated that, I want to be able to discard his opinion, or at least give it a lot less weight. Maybe for everything, or maybe for certain aspects. And so fact databases, there can be competing fact databases, and there will be different consensus on what is a fact and what is not. And for certain facts, there will be a lot more consensus. For others, there will be a lot less. And these fact databases, in terms of what I determine to be base reality, and to view the world through that perspective, there can be even different levels of certainty for different facts. And we can even, for example, I might like a specific fact database which overlaps with 99% of what I think, but for certain domain or aspect of the world, I can override things. That doesn't mean that I change the fact database for everybody else. It simply means that I take that fact database, and only for those things which my opinion differs, I can express that, and then I can construct my own new fact database, which differs only by 1% from the original one. And then I can use this fact database to feed it into the system, into all of the arguments, into all of the weighting of whose vote should count how much in terms of what my perspective is, how much I value their vote. And so yeah, even that's going to be multi-perspectival. And I'm going to be able to, of course, choose my fact databases either publicly or privately. I mean, I might construct my own view of the world entirely privately, and nobody will be the wisest in terms of knowing how I'm viewing the world. But I can actually also make it public, how I choose to view the world and what to me is reality and what is not. And we can see how many people are aggregating on different, they're coalescing towards a certain fact database, and how they gradually change in terms of what they think is true. Okay, another thing we're going to talk about is relevance realization. This is a concept by John Vervaeke. I think this is his biggest contribution, and it's a really useful way to think of the world and what our minds do and what general intelligence should be able to do. It should be able to determine what is relevant in any context. And yeah, maybe sometime I'm gonna dive into deeper how I understand that concept. But here I'm gonna mention how this is gonna be actually facilitated in this new internet. And the two most important things, or maybe they're actually just one thing, are ranking and sorting. I mean, when you sort something, you've actually ranked them. And so we'll be able to have lists where we rank things. Like, for example, what are the top 100 or top 10 most important things for me in the world? Or what are my values? Or what I think everybody else should view or watch? Or maybe what everybody else should watch for a specific aspect, like in terms of finance or in terms of education. Like, we need to be able to rank anything. And because in this new internet, every concept or event or entity is going to be deduplicated, and there will be a single representation of it, many opinions, but a single representation. That means that the concept of top 10 things I want everybody to watch is going to be a specific deduplicated concept. And I'm going to construct my list of things, and then I'm going to submit that, and I might make it public. I might make it private, But if it's public, and somebody else also constructs their list of top 10 things, when I look at the top 10 things everybody should watch on the internet, I'm going to be browsing the different top 10 lists of everybody else. And for example, I might see what different professors or some public figure thinks is the most important thing which everybody else should watch. But because every concept or event or entity in this ecosystem is also going to be duplicated, that means that the entries I've added into the list are also going to be duplicated. And so if two people add the same movie or video or identity to pay attention to into their lists, then we'll be able to actually aggregate what are the top 10 most important things we should all watch, and we'll be able to see what collectively we've surfaced in terms of what is most important. But the cool thing is that in this new internet, we'll be able to give different weights, different identities, and we'll be able to give different weights to them, not just entirely like for everything, but for specific aspects they can have different weights. Like if somebody is more of an expert in some field, they should get maybe higher higher weight, bigger weight of their opinions in that regard. And when we're surfacing what is most important, what are top 10 things everybody should watch for a specific thing, we'll be able to give more weight to the right voices, at least right in our judgment, because this is a multi-perspectival system inherent fundamentally. Another really core piece of the whole thing is that because everything is going to be deduplicated, and many things are going to point to it, like many different opinions. Like there's one event, like the war in Afghanistan, but there were going to be multiple opinions if that was a good thing or a bad thing or who is responsible. And we'll be able to say, give me, we'll be able to say this to the system. We're going to be able to query it, like, give me everything important or everything which is related to that thing. And we're going to get a huge result set of many opinions and different types of events and expressions. And then we'll be able to filter that more concretely. Like, I want only the opinions of people I follow, or people who are followed by people I follow, like one level away from me. Or maybe I want only people who are PhDs and they have proven that with some credential tied to their identity. Or I only want anonymous opinions. And in this system, we'll be able to have anonymous identities, and we'll be able to still prove credentials and yet not reveal who we are. When I look at something, I'm gonna be able to ask for a specific set of events and signals related to it, and I'll be able to define the filter for that in any way I want. And for example, I'm going to be able to say, what do doctors think about some aspects? Not just anybody, but people who are certified doctors, and maybe if they're not feeling comfortable expressing that opinion publicly because of repercussions to their, to their livelihood, they'll be able to prove that they're a doctor and yet remain anonymous in this system. We'll be able to define and control the positional scarcity for events, and not events and entities or concepts, and that means also brands. In this system, we'll be able to define something like a template for what are the top 10 things most important when looking at something. And for example, if I'm really bothered by Apple that they don't source their cobalt properly for their batteries. I'm not sure if that's still the case, but for example, if it's coming from the Congo, I want to make in the top 10 things when somebody looks at Apple, for example, I want one of them to be their ethics score. And I want that ethics score not to be determined by some, cabal of agencies or some, institutions which I absolutely don't know anything about, like an ESG score. I want to be able to choose my own indexing or scoring from institutions which I trust, and I want to be able to express that in the top 10 things which somebody should see when they look at Apple, they should be able to see the ethics score, which is computed in a way that I feel comfortable with, or at least I've delegated my judgment to a friend of mine who I trust, who is better able to determine how to calculate the ethics for that company. And so suddenly we'll be able to collectively control what is attached to something. And so instead of simply being propagandized with marketing and advertising from the top down, from the tiny set of really well coordinated people who have an agenda for some institution or company, there should be a mechanism for us collectively to, if something is wrong and it is sufficiently wrong, it should be able to be discovered easily by everyone. And that doesn't mean that everybody should be participating actively and trying to think about which institutions to trust for opinions. No, most people will delegate that to others, but still, when they've delegated that they trust their uncle or their friends about something, we'll be able to properly signal what are the most important things somebody should see when they look at something. And I shouldn't pick on Apple too much. Like, this is for everything. Like, for example, a Wikipedia page will be structured in terms of what are the 10 most important things to know about something. And if one of them is the criticism section, then that criticism section could also have the top 10 best criticisms for that concept. And I should be able to see even if one of my friends or somebody I follow has expressed an opinion which is critical of some concept. For example, if Naval has said something critical of utilitarianism as a philosophy, I should be able to simply see that when I'm browsing utilitarianism and the criticism section of it. And currently, there is no way for me to query the internet. What has Naval said about utilitarianism? I mean, I can do it. I can do it through Google, but Google hasn't indexed everything, and it's not really good indexing. And maybe Naval has said different things and different times about that. But I want to see all of that at one place easily. It should be easily locatable, and it should be ordered and organized. But currently, the internet is absolutely not organized because all of the concept entities and events are simply there are many duplicates, and there are also many duplicated platforms. And so there are many competing platforms trying to offer different services, and even within those platforms, there's so much duplication in terms of content, and it's just a sea of information, and it's really hard to filter it, to browse it, to look at it and reason about it in a structured way. But in this system, it's going to be a lot different. And so, yeah, I was talking about relevance and positional scarcity. And so we'll be able to define templates for what are the most important things or concepts for something or sources of signal for something. And yeah, hopefully I can talk about this a lot better in the future. So reputation. Currently in social media, the only numeric reputation we have is the follower count, which is really bad because first followers doesn't tell you much in terms of how capable they are or how capable they are in different fields. And so in this system, reputation is going to be compartmentalized, and there will be different types of reputation. One will be simply how many people follow someone, but they might follow them only for they're curious for their new events and content which they generate, or they might follow someone and have delegated their vote to someone. I might follow their content, but I might not have delegated my vote to them. Those are separate things. Here, we're going to be able to compartmentalize reputation. And for example, if somebody is a doctor and they have earned, reputation online for their expertise in that, when it comes to war and predictions and saying who is wrong for invading or whatever, or what the causal forces were which led to the specific event, I might not want to trust them that much, and I won't see. I mean, of course, if somebody is a doctor, that doesn't mean that they shouldn't have an opinion on anything else. But if I want to give them, I should be able to determine how competent they are on the other thing, and that doesn't mean that their competence from one area should automatically translate to another. They should be able to earn reputation in another area as well, like by making successful predictions, or by simply being voted by others for having good opinions, like good explanations for what is going on. Of course, that's subjective and it might not be true, but still, I think the best ways for us to, gain the credibility of someone is first what is their track record in terms of predictions, and that's going to be they'll be able to encode that specifically and unambiguously in this system, and they'll be able to build a track record. And the other means is by other people voting and saying, yes, this person has a good opinion, I trust them for this. And so yeah, in this system, we're gonna have compartmentalized reputation for different aspects, and also we'll be able to separate following from actually delegating your, respect to someone. I might follow someone without respecting them at all, and I might be simply curious for what they're doing. And this reputation then is going to be, we'll be able to use it computationally in the system, and we'll be able to give them higher voting power for the different aspects of their field, which they're in their domain, where they're good at. And so we'll be able to be subjectively objective. What does that mean? We'll be able to subjectively choose how to calculate votes, but once we have chosen an algorithm or a rule set, or what the rules of the game for everybody are, then we'll be able to objectively calculate the reputation of everyone, judged by the rules we have chosen. And so we'll be voting not so much on we'll be voting on algorithms, on mechanisms, on principles, and then we'll be depending on what principles and algorithms we've chosen, we'll be able to calculate the reputation of identities and entities in a field. And we'll be able to even stack and compose really complex rule sets of how to actually give more weight to something. And of course, if there's some disagreement in terms of how we want to weight things or what's more important, we can again branch and fork and have our own view of the world. And and it can be only for part of the world. It doesn't have to branch off entirely from the world. And so, why should people strive for a higher reputation in this system? One of them is that they're going to have higher voting power in a given domain. And another thing is that they'll simply be higher in the leaderboards. It's simply going to feel good to them. Like, we want to stand out and show off for how good we are at something. We like recognition. And so a leaderboard is the simplest form of recognition. And even if it's not directly tied to monetary rewards, they can later monetize their proven expertise. They'll be able to be better consultants, but they'll be higher paid consultants if they have a higher ranking. Another way to incentivize people to gain higher reputation in this system is that when they post content, it might be more visible. We might tune the algorithms, which show us content, to simply show us more or more often with higher visibility the content from people who have a really high reputation. And the fourth way to incentivize people to compete for reputation and to prove it and to earn it by either by others delegating it to them or by proving it with correct predictions, which are hard to really easy to computationally verify that they have earned that reputation. So the fourth way is, if a collective is operating with some common pool of funds, they'll be able to reward the people with the highest ranking, with the highest reputation. And we can also construct the reputation. We can reset it from time to time, like different seasons in games, where because you don't want somebody to gain an enormous reputation and stay high up in there forever. We might want them to have an incentive to keep contributing and to keep earning their place. And there might be something like a decay function for if you haven't done anything in 2 years, you might lose 50% of your reputation, or 80%, or maybe 10%. And we'll be able to vote on the decay function. We'll be able to vote on any aspect of how to construct a common view of the world. So we'll be able to incentivize not simply identities and specific people to compete for reputation in the system, but we might construct our own view of the reputation of companies and brands. And what might we want them to do? Like, for example, if we want more companies to open more of their patents, or just make more of their internal documents or processes or data public, just for us to know what's going on, we might rank companies in terms of how open they are in terms of what they're doing. And first, that's going to affect when we look at them, their brand, and we look at the template which is defining the positional scarcity of what should be shown when somebody is looking at that. That's one way to surface information. But another is to give them as a brand in this ecosystem higher visibility of their posts if they do what we think they should be doing. And if they open more patents, if they engage less in plant obsolescence, or if they fix their supply chain for where they're getting their cobalt for their batteries, or if they start paying the open source projects which they're using more, because currently so many multi-trillion-dollar companies aren't paying a dime for so much of the open source software they're using, simply because they can get away with it. What if we started shaming companies for not paying, absolutely anything for open source, and relying on people doing the work for those open source projects in their spare time, and not earning absolutely anything in return? What if we were able to actually incentivize companies to fix such tragedies of the commons? Because open source is plagued by, it doesn't have a good business model, and it's relying on altruism. But what if we were able to actually incentivize more the people who are doing the open source? Because open source is just so practical, and it makes common sense. Because it's software which is written once and reused across so many different companies. It's so more optimal. Instead of you having to develop something in a closed source way, and then your competitors are doing the same thing, and they have to hire also people to do the same thing, and they want a competitive edge. What if that functionality was implemented only once, and it was held to the highest standard, with the most eyeballs contributing to it and fixing issues? What if we were able to incentivize companies to pay and to support things which simply make everything more economically efficient? And so we'll be able to incentivize companies to do such things by even bribing them with higher visibility in their content in this social media. And so that means that they're going to have a reduced marketing spend. What if a company currently spends 40% of their revenue towards marketing, and if that can be cut in half or even further? That's the goal here. So everything I said today is mostly in the talk which I gave last year. So this is like another way for me to verbalize it, but this time with a lot less rehearsals, like literally no rehearsals. I just sketched out a bunch of bullet points for the foundational things in this new internet. So what should the foundational things? Reputation, which is not simply a follower count, but which is compartmentalized into different aspects of expertise. Another foundational thing is that when you look at a concept, you'll be able to, or an event or an entity, you'll be able to fetch everything which is related to it, and then start filtering further that blob of data you've received. And you'll be able to query more specifically, and you'll be able to more easily find signals related to something. Another thing which is really key is the events versus state distinction. That identities, they generate events and signals, but how we interpret them, we choose how to interpret them. Another core thing is the liquid democracy part, which is not simply for voting, but also for inheriting settings, which are not simply cosmetic, like what are the colors of if it's a white or dark theme, but also which algorithms I'm using to surface information, or what are my subscriptions. Another key thing is we'll be able to subscribe for events and notifications, and construct many different feeds for different aspects of what we want to from the world to reach us. Another key thing is that the social graph of identities is going to be one, and it's going to be reused by many new social services and different views for the internet. Another really key thing is the debate maps and the argument maps, where you can actually see for a specific debate every pro and con and different arguments, and you'll be able to vote on them, and you'll be able to choose how you want which votes to count for your view of the world. And another core thing is the relevance realization part, with sorting and ranking things, where what are my top 10 or top 100 most important things for a specific aspect. And these don't have to be simply positional, like number 1, 2, 3, and 4. We can have points, like I have 1,000 points which I need to distribute across 10 things, and I might give the number 1 thing not just 100, which is 1/10. I can give 500 points, and the rest 500 points I can divide to the rest 9 items which I'm gonna give. Or I might give all 1000 of my points to a single element and just say this is truly the most important thing for me, and nothing else even comes close, and I want to give all of my points to that one thing, and I want to surface that, to raise a high signal for that thing. And one more thing. So if somebody doesn't have an identity in this system and they're just not participating, because every concept entity and event is gonna have a single representation, somebody can create a placeholder for that person or entity who is missing, and if they're important enough, and then they will be part of the system. There will be a representation for them, even though they themselves don't own an account. And that means that we'll be able to attach opinions and signals towards them. And so it's going to be just like if they were participating. And if in the future they create their own account in the system, we're going to be able to simply remap their current placeholder when they were missing to point towards now their real account, and all of the events and opinions which were generated towards them will simply be rerouted towards their new identity, and they will be counted. So there will be something like a persistence of identity. So yeah, and if somebody is really important, they don't get to choose to not be talked about in this system. And of course, that doesn't mean that there will be no rules in this system. Like we can have our own culture and say and determine when should we create a placeholder for someone, and if they're above certain importance. Wikipedia, for example, doesn't have page on any person in the world. You have to be notable for some reason, and they have some policy for that. And the same way in this system, we're gonna have a policy for when it makes sense to make a representation of someone, to start attaching opinions towards them. And if somebody violates the culture and the policy for when to represent someone, we, in our view of the world, which is constructed from all of the events in our the state we're going to be using, we can simply discard that because it doesn't. We can flag it and simply not count it, and it will simply not appear in our state, even though somebody has made a representation of someone. But they shouldn't have, because it's not above our policy. So yeah, in this system, if you are notable and consequential in the world, you don't get to say, I don't want to participate in this new information environment. We all get to choose how and what to talk about. And so even if somebody is not part of this system, there will, and they're important, there will be a representation for them. There will be some proxy, some placeholder, and that means that if they make predictions in other media outside of this ecosystem, and we'll be able to point to those external sources and show what they have said. We'll be able to actually plug their predictions or their opinions into the system, even if they didn't personally add those opinions and plug them into the system. And also this can probably automate it with LLMs as well. So yeah, important people will not have the option to not participate in the system, and their track record will be inputted into the system in terms of what they've publicly said. And of course, somebody can slander someone, and they can say, someone can input that some important person said something when they didn't actually. But then this can be adjudicated into this system, and it can be shown that to others that there was fake data submitted, and it can simply not be counted, and there can be consequences in terms of reputation for whoever submitted wrong data. And in this system, it makes it pays for your identity to grow with reputation, and the more your reputation you get, the more power you get in this system, but there's also a lot more to lose. And so a new account will not have much power in this system. So if you have already power, you want to keep it. You will have the incentive to keep being truthful and honest, or at least to the best of your abilities, even though we don't always get things right. Of course, there's mistakes, but yeah, there's the incentive to be truthful according to the system. Another thing is that because people have different weights to their votes, to their opinions, that doesn't mean that they will be different for everything. We can have something like a bottom constitution for which it is one identity, one vote. They're all equal, but for specific things, for example, energy policy or whatever, then we can have different weights for the votes. But for certain things, in terms of culture or values or whatever, there can be equal, and we can determine for which things our votes should be equal and for which things they shouldn't be equal. And also, I mentioned that we'll be able to, if we're accredited as a doctor or some professor or something, we'll be able to bind that accreditation to our identity. But this also goes for nationality. And so national voting will be able to be plugged into the system as well. And also it will be able to be anonymous too. You'll be able to bind your nationality credential to an anonymous identity. And you'll be able to bind it only once. So you will not be able to cheat and have your vote counted multiple times. And so, yeah, I think these are important things which I missed in this introductory first foundational episode. And in the future, we're going to talk about many more interesting things. And another thing, I guess you've seen videos on YouTube which have comments disabled, but actually anybody can simply paste that comment in Reddit, and then people can discuss it on Reddit, or they can discuss it on Twitter or X. And so to me, it just doesn't make sense for you to disable comments like that, and even though people can still comment it on the content. And in this system which I'm proposing, you will be able to express an opinion that you don't want comments viewed by default around your video. But if a person decides not to take your preference as a creator, they can they can choose to see all of the comments displayed right next to the video if they want to. So currently the internet enables such breaking the integration of information, even though you can still comment on things. So when somebody disables comments on YouTube video, they're not stopping people to comment. They simply don't want to push it away from the immediate visibility of their content. And usually there are different reasons. Sometimes it's because of scammers. If it's a financial channel, you don't want a bunch of call this number to get rich or whatever. But sometimes people simply don't want criticism. And in this system, when I, as a user, look at the video, I'll be able to decide if I want to honor this preference from the creator. And if I don't want to honor it and I still want to see all the comments, I will be able to, for myself, to determine the filters for those comments, and I might easily filter out scammers and bots and stuff like that. And I might want to see if somebody I know or I respect has said something about this. I should be able to easily see this. And currently in the internet, it's simply facilitating the integration, the breaking of the integration of information. I can't say from now what the next episode is going to be about. And hopefully this time I don't take 5 weeks, but maybe more like 3 weeks for the next episode. We'll see how it goes. No promises. Yeah, so this is all for today. This has been a single take, just like I wanted it to be. And hopefully it's listenable. And so all of my socials are in a link tree. Like my socials are Twitter, YouTube channel, and LinkedIn, and there's a Discord server. So if you find this interesting, you can join the Discord server. You can find it in the socials link, wherever you look for social links for channels, and below. And that's it from me. And see you next time. Bye.